It's official. You now have U.S. politicians going on camera and saying, yes, we will have a wealth tax. We will have an unrealized capital gains tax. They don't mind saying it, and they claim the billionaires will be paying it, but there's a new article that suggests, no, that's not the target. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, the channel and the company that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. I was reading the Wall Street Journal recently and I found this article. It says Biden's real tax target isn't the super rich. His plan would sock it to the working rich whose taxes are already high, not billionaire investors. This is by Clifford Astus. He is apparently a hedge fund manager. Here's his opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. He says the Biden administration is trying to sell its Build Back Better agenda by demonizing the super wealthy. But that's just the sales pitch. The actual product is a tax bill sent mostly elsewhere to the already highly taxed working rich. Now, we've been telling you, and by the way, I saw even Bill Maher, hardly a right-wing conservative, hardly a guy who is opposed to taxation. I saw Bill Maher a couple days ago went on and said, so what if I'm paraphrasing, so what if Jeff Bezos has a space shuttle? Why is everything in the United States, and I would take that to extend to much of the Western world today, why is it about gotcha against what Jeff Bezos did or what Elon Musk did? Last I heard, Elon Musk was living in a trailer next to the space facility in the middle of nowhere in Texas after selling his properties. And so even people on the left, and I'm not saying we're not left or right here, but people on the left who you think would be like, yes, sock it to the billionaires. They're saying, why is every politician, why is AOC and Nancy Pelosi and all these extreme left Bernie Sanders types, why is everything an excuse for, we need to tax them? Yeah, guess what? Jeff Bezos came up with Amazon. The Google guys created Google. Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook. You may like these things or not. They have like 1 billion or more users. Of course they're going to be wealthier than you are. That's the problem. Oh yeah, so what? He invented Facebook? Yeah. And I cooked a mean rigatoni yesterday. Of course he should have more money than you do, and that means he can go to space, he can do whatever else. But that's the problem, where you just can't be rich. They'll demonize you no matter what. But the actual product is a tax bill sent mostly elsewhere to the already taxed working rich. Now, there are people who come on our channel who don't know what Nomad Capitalist is all about, or who don't know or who don't like what Nomad Capitalist is all about. And they say, well, why don't you rich jerks just pay your fair share? Now, I lived in the United States, and I had, in my early 20s, I started making a 6-figure income, and I left when I had, a higher 6-figure income. And, I had some capital gains. I sold a business or two, and I was paying a rate in excess of 40% when you added everything up. And so, okay, I'm going to get $1,100 a month from Social Security, so they say, when I turn, I guess, 66 years old. That plus all the other money that I spent that's going to go down the drain, that's pretty common for someone working. And if I were to go back there now, I would be paying close to 50%, even if I lived in a lower tax state. People like you, people like myself, we are not the ones who are paying zero. We're paying a lot because we have capital gains from selling stocks or from selling crypto. We have money from running businesses, from doing consulting, from doing whatever it is. People who are making the kind of money that I'm talking to people. Now, we have some 9- and 10-figure folks. By the way, they're paying a lot of taxes in some cases themselves. But people I'm talking to are paying 35, 40, 45, 50, 56% in some cases. They are the working rich. But because they make $5 or $10 million a year, amounts the average person can't fathom, they must be just as bad as Jeff Bezos in his rocket ship. The article continues how the litany of the supposed tax crimes committed by tech founders and private equity billionaires is long and well known. They pay less than their secretaries do. Thanks, Warren. They spend money borrowed against their shares, leaving most of their wealth untouched and untaxed until death. Their children inherit those shares, kicking in the stepped-up basis, and their massive capital gains are then blasted into loophole ether, leaving their heirs to pay only the 40% estate tax, some of which they could perhaps avoid. Heaven forbid that people don't hand over millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars because the guy who paid $3 grand last year would be upset. Private equity billionaires do much of the same stuff, and also you get used to the famous carried interest loophole. by trading their labor for shares in risky enterprises. The lucky or very good ones pay capital gains taxes, not ordinary income, rates on those gains. And all these miscreants are, of course, supposedly hiding tons of untaxed wealth offshore, likely aiming to become bond villains. Now, we've seen when they introduced FATCA almost a decade ago at this point, the idea was the same thing they're trotting at now, by the way. We're going to have more enforcement. And the idea basically is what Elizabeth Warren, God bless her, for just coming out and saying what other politicians don't have the stones to say. If you're rich, you're a tax cheat. That's what she said. If you're rich, you must be a tax cheat. Now, we talk here, and I, as the goody two-shoes of the offshore business, in a nasty, vile, despicable business full of vultures and really terrible people, I, as the goody two-shoes of this business, have said, do it legally. And because of the way I was raised, I always believed doing it legally. Now, I decided eventually I had enough, and so I extricated myself from the system, but I did not ever do anything untoward on my taxes. In fact, myself and a number of people I've worked with over the years say, you know what, I'm probably paying too much. I want to make sure there's not an issue. I overpay a little bit just to make sure there's no issue. And so what they say is, oh, if we just only go for these rich people, they're all hiding money somewhere. They're all hiding money offshore, as if it's even possible anymore. I mean, there's numerous shows you can watch on television. You watch shows, you watch movies. They'll talk about how, like, guys are moving $10 million in a boat somewhere down to a money hole, like in Antigua or something. Go to Antigua and try and find a bank to take your $10 million in cash. Many of you have written into me and said, I tried to call the bank in Antigua. They won't take me without cash. They won't take me, I want to send $1,000 in. And they're like, no, we don't want you. And so it can be hard to find a bank, but nobody knows that because nobody watches Nomad Capitalist. They don't want to go where they're treated best, and because they just don't care. It's easier to blame the billionaires. How much untaxed wealth is offshore? Now, the politicians have created some loopholes for big companies, but how much for companies like myself? In fact, if you look at the history of taxes in the U.S., you will see that big companies have continued to get tax favors, including in the last couple of years, while just regular old expats living offshore have been at a disadvantage. And so all this idea of hidden untaxed wealth, all this idea of people paying less than their secretary, it's ridiculous. And quite frankly, you want to talk about my idea for a fair tax? Send everyone a bill for their share of services. Here's your little bill for being a citizen of the United States. And maybe we'll hear less about this. I paid $3 grand. Why did you only pay $10 million? But the article continues. After talking about the hidden untaxed wealth offshore, which I suppose does exist to some small amount, but it's very, very, very difficult to do these days. Let's just say this. I don't think that AOC is smart enough to crack the case on these few remaining people who have their hidden untaxed wealth offshore. We talk about ways to legally move your money offshore, declare it when necessary, file the right forms, make sure you're in full legal compliance with the rules. And again, if you don't want to be part of the rules, you extricate yourself from the system with things like a second passport, you leave the country, you expatriate, whatever the case may be. We talk about legally moving your money offshore so it's not taken, it's not devalued, it's invested in markets that are going in the right direction, that aren't bubbles. But those things are all legal, as they should be. The article continues, the list is a mix of things critics are right about. The step-up basis is hard to defend, blah, 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 blah. But under the actual proposal, capital gains tax would go up, but the step-up rule to avoid them at death would remain. Carried interest treatment is only slightly altered, and current proposals seem to make this advantage even more exclusive to private equity and venture capital. The IRS would get more money for enforcement, but this be directed as usual, mostly against easier targets and the super rich, people with small businesses. This is me speaking now. People with smaller businesses, mid-sized businesses, the guy making $500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year, which as much as the average person thinks, well, that guy must be really sophisticated, living on his yacht with his little white cat in his chair. It's not that uncommon these days to have a 7-figure income, to have an 8-figure income. Plenty of businesses selling stuff online, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's consulting, whether it's online courses, whether it's whatever. Plenty of people in crypto, plenty of people trading. I talk to these folks every day. Of course, they are a small percentage of the population because most people don't put in the effort to learn how to become an excellent trader. Most people don't take the risk to buy cryptocurrency when Bitcoin is $5. Most people don't take the risk to go out and start a business and face the adverse consequences and to give up their weekends and do all this kind of stuff for years and years and years and to push through and learn how to create something great. And yet, we act like these people are the same as Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. I got nothing against Elon Musk, but to treat someone who's making $10 million a year selling knickknacks online, That guy probably does not run nearly as sophisticated as a business as you think he does, but it doesn't mean that he's cheating on his taxes. It just means that the IRS is going to have more money to hire more government workers, to further deputize the government to take more control of your life, and therefore to go around and harass more people. And I can tell you, you know what? If you're a guy who's playing by the rules, or you're a woman who's playing by the rules, do you really want more harassment on top of all the forms, all the 1099, all the whatever you got to do every year, all the reporting? Now they want to say every $600 in your bank account, every transaction, they're gonna report that. Do you really need more work? Do you really need more hassle? Is that the way you feel like you're treated best in your own country? No, of course not. And hopefully it's going to encourage more people to realize this is the last straw. I play by the rules, and now they're going to send more guys from the IRS after me to nail me. I had a guy just the other day, he said, I got a thing from the IRS, I owe them $23. It turns out I don't owe them $23. We filed we responded, and they said, okay, you're right. What a waste of time responding to letters for $23 when you don't owe $23. I've been through this myself when California took money from me that I already paid. Here's the canceled check. It took them months to realize, here's my canceled check. That's what this is going to do. It's not going to make Elon Musk's life any more difficult. It's going to make the guy who makes a couple $1 million a year, who may not even have a full-time finance person on the staff, he's going to now slow down his business productivity. And I've seen this firsthand. He's going to have to expand less, hire fewer people, all because he's going to commit more time to cooperating with the government's incessant and insipid intrusions. And so the bottom line, what he's saying here is, this is not targeting the super rich, but he continues. The IRS likely knows that there are a few hidden hordes of American-owned offshore wealth. I can tell you that's true. While few Americans were named in the so-called Pandora Papers, a great how these Pandora Papers, by the way, aren't even noted, and all these other papers aren't noted as the great intrusion of privacy. It's just like, oh yeah, hey, we hacked into some people's stuff and got some, yeah, sounds perfectly ethical to me. Few Americans were named in the so-called Pandora Papers, which revealed the shady offshore holdings of many prominent foreign politicians, i.e. the ones making the freaking tax laws, not the ones following them, not the guys sitting around being audited by the IRS, but the shady, prominent foreign politicians, shady offshore holdings of prominent politicians. Why don't we go after the politicians? Why don't we spend our resources auditing the politicians? Why don't we go after the ones and make them come clean if they're the ones who are in the Pandora Papers and other papers? But Americans, he says, are nevertheless tacitly being used to justifying raising taxes right here in the 50 states. And so the article continues. He talks about how there is no wealth tax proposed, and then a couple days later, Nancy Pelosi came out and said there probably will be a wealth tax. Ron Wyden wants not only to tax wealth, but to do so annually on unrealized gains, which is truly insane. A wealth tax is retroactive, unfair, and unworkable. It is, would at least actually hit the super wealthy, the pretend target of the proposed legislation. But as always, it would hit so many others so much harder who aren't famous and powerful. You can see this over the history of the U.S. Look at things like the alternative minimum tax. They once put it at a number where it's like, nobody makes this amount of money. And then they forgot to adjust it. And then it became like you lived in the suburbs of Minneapolis and you had a decent job and you were somehow had to be snatched into this tax net. Look at all the things that they have not done. Look at some of the tax stuff on expats in just the last couple of years where they were so sloppy about it. They're like, oh, you know what, we're going to treat Facebook and, Bob's Knitting in Scotland, run by that U.S. citizen. We're going to treat that the same way. These guys running Congress. Now, I don't know if there's anyone in the U.S. Congress in the Pandora Papers. I didn't see that. But a lot of politicians in the Pandora Papers, they're the ones saying that you're not paying enough. This writer is saying the bulk of the myriad of the tax increases will be called the working rich, people with very high ordinary income in a given year. Not even necessarily every year. It might be you sell a business one year. You built it your entire life in some cases. You sell it, and now you're the same as Elon Musk, and they're going to drive a van around Washington, D.C. with your face on it and a clown nose. Again, people who earn high incomes for a short while, athletes and movie stars, etc. The working rich are the ones who pay these highest rates he's talking about. 50% or more in some places. You thought 50% was in Denmark and places where you got lots of free stuff, cradle to grave care, lots of free stuff. No, you could be paying close to that in parts of the United States if you were one of this evil group of working rich. The U.S. Congress, now, Is Elon Musk, are all those guys in his league getting off so easy? No. And again, I say, you know what? For what they're doing, good for them. For the average guy paying $3 grand and they pay $300 million, good. But what the Congress is going to do, what politicians are going to do, they only care about optics. My father once told a story about how if your neighbor makes $60,000 a year and you make $70,000 a year, the neighbor quite possibly says, yeah, that guy's rich. And maybe he even thinks that guy's a rich jerk. Look at him with his $70,000 a year. Nothing against whether you make $60,000, $70,000 or more, but the politicians know that. And they know that the average person can't comprehend the difference between 50,000 and 5 million and 500 million and 50 billion. They don't know the difference between capital gains and income and any of this. They just hear some guy saying, I pay less than my secretary, which is a little bit misleading. And they say, yeah, we need to do something about that. And the politicians want to get reelected, and they don't care. It's like, all right, we'll get these working class rich. Will that do? Yeah, we'll be happy. All right, great. Yeah, $5 million a year, we're going to tax you. You sell the farm, great, we're going to tax you. They don't care about actually solving the problem. They don't actually care about bringing in revenue. Otherwise, they wouldn't have $30 trillion in debt. But if you are in this working class rich, what do you need to do? Well, you need to go where you're treated best. You need to stop being used as the poster children. You need to stop being used as the hit squad for politicians who want to get votes by saying they're solving a problem of public outrage from people who don't really understand what's happening. Sure, should Elon Musk pay $0? I think there's some reasons why a guy like Elon Musk might pay $0, but fine. Going after guys who are running ordinary businesses is not the answer, but they don't care. They just want the votes. And if you're the sacrificial lamb, then so be it. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.